All right, so here it is. We got the seat bolted down. It's looking really good. And check this out. Boom. Oh, hi. Hi, and welcome back to Wild and Wheels. This week, we got a lot of big things that we're going to be doing to the Pug, and we're making it look pretty good, and I think we're going to have it running and driving. I'm just waiting on a couple more parts coming from Amazon, and that's all we need to finish this bad boy up. Today, what we're going to be doing is on these engines, I believe there's one charging coil, and what I did is I went on the old Amazons, and I found a dual charging coil. Both of them all wired into one. So we're going to be installing this right here onto this engine, and that way we can increase the charging capacity of this engine from approximately 3 amps to approximately 6 amps. It's going to help keep the battery charged, and you might be able to turn the headlights on once in a while. Now, I think long term, and this is going to be after we get the new transaxle, the new axle installed, I'll probably be ended up putting on an actual alternator. You can get a small little 20 amp alternator. I think they put them on the Gators, the John Deere Gators. I think that's what the alternators are generally used for, but they're a nice small 20 amp alternator. It's a single wire permanent magnet, so you don't have to have any kind of control systems to run it. You just, as long as the engine's spinning, the sucker's making power. So that'll be long term, but for now, let's get this guy going so we can just get this Pug running. Okay, also the other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the jets out on this carburetor. It does come with jets for higher altitudes, 3,000 to 6,000 feet. So I will be putting that in today as well. So let's start by taking the carburetor off. Just get it out of the way. So to remove these carburetors, once you've unbolted and taken off your air cleaner, take the throttle and open it all the way up to wide open and slide the carburetor slightly off of the studs. My hands are in the way so you can see here. Let's take the gasket off so we don't rip that. Got these little gaskets in there. So rotate the carburetor to fully open. Slide it forward. That'll allow you to take this rod and just slide it straight up. That's part of the governor. Then once that's off, then you can use needle nose pliers, or if you're not wearing gloves, a lot of times you can just grab it with your fingers, but you just take the spring off. Let both of those kind of just dangle in the breeze. Okay, carburetor's off. Now I do want to point this out. You see this gasket? Oh, it's got this hole right here in the top. It's very crucial. If you look at this plastic spacer right here, you see there's a groove cut into it, and that groove comes down into this little square. That is actually the atmospheric breather for the carburetor, and as you can see, it matches the channel on the back side of the carburetor here and goes up into this hole. This hole in the top is actually the breather for the bowl itself. If you put the gasket on backwards, which you can easily do, and see that right there, it lines up with the hole. You put the gasket on that way, but if you look, that little hole's plugged, and what you'll end up doing when you tighten that down, you'll plug this hole off, and then it'll put a vacuum on the carburetor, and it'll cause the carburetor to flood. So if you're having issues, put a new carburetor on, put gaskets on, and you're noticing, hey, my thing ain't running too good, it's flooding out, it runs for a minute, and then just dies, and it's just really flooding. And I just put a new carburetor on it. Take it off, and make sure you got your carburetor facing the right way. Make sure that hole lines up with this galley. I can't tell you how many small engines I've fixed, just that one thing alone. I like to buy paint cups just to keep around the shop to make a great little place to keep your nuts and bolts. All right. Okay. This is connected to, we got the wiring over here. We'll probably disconnect all that, but we don't really need to. We'll just leave that off to the side. So as you can see right here, you got your coils. That's your ignition coil. That's going to be running your spark plug. And then this other wire that's right here next to it, that's your ground wire, and that's what's going to kill the spark to the spark plug, and that's actually how you shut the engine off. Take you off, but I think we're going to need to. Let's go ahead and get all these goodies out of the way. We can put you up there. Perfect. Put you up there also. Perfect. And you. Let's just get everything up there. Perfect. Okay. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be pulling the flywheel off. All right. Perfect. Take the fan off. Perfect. There she goes. So when you're doing this, and I know it's not the proper way to use a puller, there are no threads on the face of this where we could use an actual puller. And a 3-jaw, yeah, you'd have to have a really big 3-jaw to be able to reach all the way around that to be effective. But when you're using the nut, you don't want to thread the nut down where the shaft is poking out. You want the nut to be what you're hitting. So I always make sure that I leave, make sure the nut is prouder than the shaft. If it's even, you can actually kind of ding the end of the shaft, or if the shaft is proud from the nut, then you'll be hitting on the shaft. And the whole point is to hit on the nut and not the shaft. All right, so pull this bad dude off. There we go. We got our 2 magnets on the inside. You can see right here, there's our charging coil. Right here, that's what we're going to be removing. We got this little plate going right here. Let's get all that out of the way. That little guy is just to make sure the wires don't end up coming out and getting caught in the flywheel. There's that. Let's come over here to this side of the engine. Got a little twist tie here. Looks like it is the brown wire. We'll go ahead and pull that off. Perfect. Perfectly good charging coil. Nothing wrong with it. It's just there's only one. So let's look at our Amazon charging coils. Let's see how similar are they. So one of the big things that I'm noticing on these charging coils is there are 2 wires coming off of them. And of course, both of them are yellow, so you don't know which one is which. This one has one singular wire, but if you look close right here, you can actually see they have soldered the wire directly to the steel. So that's going to be your ground, and then this is going to be your positive. So one of these is going to be ground, and one of these is going to be positive. And what we'll do is once we get this put in, we can use a multimeter and we can probe this one and then touch the case and we'll see which one's ground. One of them, when you probe, it should have a lot of resistance and the other one should have no resistance. Also, if we look at these, on the back side we have these little studs or bosses that are protruding. These ones also have those same bosses. Perfect. Now I'm going to attempt to orient these. Now the nice thing about this kit is it does come with hardware. That was kind of one of the things that I was worried about was I'll have 2 bolts because I'll be taking this one off, but I'm going to need a total of 4 for this guy. So I'm going to be putting the long pigtail coil onto the top. I think that's going to give me a little extra room to wiggle it through here. Looks like we might actually have to remove the starter and I'll be able to feed this through, but that's okay. Fit is a little bit on the tight side. It's better than it being too loose though. Let's turn the horsepower down carefully. Perfect. The wire is fairly tight. It's a little tighter than I would like, but also you don't want that wire being too loose because you don't need that thing flopping around. Let's pull the starter off here real quick. Like so. Stick these wires down here. Slide the starter back on. Let's grab our fancy little plate here. Should go something like that. Perfect. Awesome. Let's get the starter bolted back on. Perfect. Look at that. She almost looks factory. Okay, now this little Woodruff key, we need to straighten her out. Probably put a little chinger on the end of that, so let's grab a file. Clean that dude up real quick. Woodruff keys are my least favorite type of keyway. They are semicircle on the bottom and flat across the top, and they rock back and forth. And if you don't have them exactly perfectly straight, when you go to put your whatever on, a yoke, a flywheel, or whatever, you can't hardly get it. And a lot of times they're pretty tight. Like this one, I had to use the hammer to actually tap it to get it to, it was pointed, the nose was high, I had to tap it to get it leveled out a little bit. And it makes it so tight that if it's not exactly perfect, when you go to put on whatever you're putting on, you have to like hammer it on and fight it, and it's just kind of annoying. But they're very popular. All right. Flywheel. Keyway is lined up nicely. Perfect. Oh, we got to put this. Well, you know what I'm going to do? Let's look and see. Yeah, that will hit it first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with the impact first, so it's just pressing on this. So we're not putting a lot of torque onto this guy. We'll get it seated, and then we'll take it back off. And for this guy, we're going to turn the horsepower all the way up. Perfect. That way, it's seated. It's just nice and tight. Then when we go to put all this stuff on, we're not having to worry about these three line up with these guys here. It's got to go one particular way. There we go. And this guy, there's a hole and a stud. Line those guys up. It's interesting. Notice these need to, yeah, those need to line up with these holes. So if this is seated and it's not wanting to line up, keep rotating it. There we go. Triangle, it's lining up a lot better there. Get our hole and our little stud, line that up, and then our little protrusions here are seating inside of those divots on the flywheel. The joys of working outside with your tools all the time, you need a little bit of moisture and they just rust. Perfect. Spin it around, make sure everything's spinning nice and freely. There we go. That's the way she's going to go. Ugh. It's got some compression to it. Okay, so let's put our ignition coil back on very carefully. I'm going to be making sure your gasket is still on over here. Put your spacer on so we can get that guy right where it's supposed to be. Now, I like to do it, this is the way I like to do it. Okay. Rotate the engine around so your magnet is pointed right in between your two bolts here, where your coil is going to be going. So that way it holds the coil in place. Now what you need is a business card. I got a business card around here. Just find a business card. You know what? That guy right there should probably work just fine. Most of these usually want to run somewhere around a 10 thousandths air gap. So some nice heavy card stock. This is actually 2 pieces stacked on top of each other. This is probably 8 to 10. Set this down on top of the magnet. Then place your coil on top of that. See, the magnet being right there holds the coil in place. So all we got to do, put our screws back in. And if you need to wiggle it left or right, in all honesty, I'm going to try to wiggle it down that way as much as possible. Give us maybe a 1 to 32nd of a degree of advance timing. You know, any little bit you can get. Same thing like before. We're going to turn the horsepower down. Leave the cardboard in there. Get her nice and snug. Remove it, and now look at that. She's not rubbing. She's got a nice air gap, and that's what you want. And you can see, just grab you something. Business card, 2 business cards, piece of cardstock. This was actually the quick start guide for this guy, so worked perfectly. Okay, so that's good. Let's go ahead and get this cover back on. Snake her up underneath. Oh, let's put our fuel line back in here. Guess probably could have done that later. We're going to need to snip off the end of that because it tore when I was trying to get it off with the pliers. It happens. It happens, fellers. Okay. Also, I wouldn't worry about, crisscross torque sequence patterning because, it's just a piece of sheet metal at the end of the day. Let's make sure it's engaging. Yep. Everything seems to be fine. Let's grab the 8mm. Let's get these bad boys installed. Thanks, everybody. Patterns, don't like. Take all your bolts in. Then, go down. And that, my friends, is how you do a coil install. Perfect. Now, let's dive into this old carbonator here real quick. $10mm to take the bowl off. This thing has probably never seen gasoline in its life. So the gasket looks perfectly fine. They did include, it's very nice of them, just open her up, get it all out. They did include a fuel bowl gasket, which goes on the end of the bolt that tightens the fuel bowl on. They give you a spare one of those, so in case it starts to leak after you've taken it apart. They also give you a new gasket for the fuel bowl, in case that leaks when you start to take it apart. And then right here, we have 6,000 to 8,000 feet. Impressive. 3,000 to 6,000 feet. So that's the jet that we're going to be using right there. Now, I don't know if I brought a small enough screwdriver out. It's possible. Nope. I'm going to grab a small screwdriver. All right. So pocket screwdriver, probably use that, but I have this little stubby screwdriver, and that's the one that I usually use for jets. It fits just inside perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew this. So this jet is going to be your 0 to 3,000 feet. Then you have your 3 to 6. Then you have your 6 to 8. So we're definitely going to hang on to that. This little guy that came out with it is called your emulsion tube. If you look closely, it's got a bunch of little pinholes on the sides of it. It's got some other holes cross drilled into here. It's got holes all the way around, and then it goes straight through to the top. That's important. And if yours fell out and you took your jet out and you don't know which way it goes in, you got your little flat spots down here, your shoulders, and then you have a side with non-shoulders. That's going to go inside first. The non-shouldered side is going to go inside first. So we're just going to take it like this, drop it right inside. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I'll show you. Well, I'll show you when I put the jet in. But you can actually see the top of the emulsion tube actually pokes out into the inside of the carburetor, into the throat of the carburetor. All right, there's our 3 to 6,000 foot jet right there. We're just going to, double check that it's clean, clear hole. We're going to thread this guy in here. Now remember, you're working on a carburetor. Okay, so gently, carefully. You don't got to torque it. You don't got a monkey wrench on it. Just nice and easy. Okay, so she's tight. We're going to go, and that's it. Just a 1/8 of a turn, if you will. Okay. If you look inside, I'll actually poke from this side right here. If you look inside, you can see this little tube that's standing up right here. That's your emulsion tube. So you have to have you got to have the skinny side's got to go up because it needs to actually fit inside the tube. This is where all of the gas comes out and into the engine, is through that emulsion tube. It's very important that it's clean and clear. So if you have a carburetor that's running rough, it's not running quite right, and you think the jets might be plugged, you take the jet out to clean the jet, make sure that that emulsion tube comes out. It can get kind of stuck in there, and you can take a small little pocket screwdriver like this, poke it inside the carburetor, and just give it a little push, and then it'll come out. And make sure that thing's cleaned out and clear too. Make sure all the cross holes are clean and clear, and put it all back together. If you have a plugged up jet, and the emulsion tube's also plugged up, and you pull the jet out and put a new jet in, or clean the jet really well and put it back together, it's still going to run like crap. Okay. So, let's put our bowl back on here. Now, the bowl, you can put it on any way you want. So this is a drain screw they have on the side. You can put it on any way you want. I prefer to put it on so that drain screw is facing dead forward. So when this thing's sitting on here, if you're not going to be running it for a while and you want to take that off, you can, and it's easy to get to. It's facing forward. Easiest way to get to it. Okay, so now we're going to put the screw in right here. I'm not going to be putting any of the new gaskets on. This thing hasn't been run. It hasn't ever seen gasoline, and they were in perfect condition when we took them off. But we'll be hanging on to them and keep them in a little Ziploc baggies, so that way in the future, if we need them, we got them. All right. There we go. Now, is that long enough? It is not. We're going to need to get a new fuel line. Yep. Nope, that's okay. We'll get new fuel line because that ripped. And if I trim it just past the rip, I don't think it's going to reach. That's okay. So we'll get a longer fuel line. And then when it comes time to install your carburetor, you've made your repairs, you got your new carburetor, you're ready to put it on. This is how we do this. In reverse order of how we took it off. So we're going to start with the spring first. Grab a pair of needle nose pliers. Move this forward a little bit so you can maybe see a little better. Needle nose pliers. I'm gonna grab the top of the spring, work it forward, hook it, and then let go. Now we have our throttle linkage here, right? We're gonna open the throttle all the way up, wide open. See, I've pulled the carburetor off about halfway. Open the throttle up all the way. It's gonna slide right down inside of there. Let it off. Slide the carburetor back on. Done. Okay, so the nice thing about this coil is it is universal. It'll fit on any Honda type engine. So this guy, also 212, it'll fit on an actual Honda. It'll fit on any of them. So as long as the flywheel has a magnet on the inside, not the outside. Outside magnets for the coil, for the spark plug coil. The inside magnets are for your charging coils. So most of your Predator 212s, Hemi and non-Hemi engines actually have the magnets on the inside of the flywheel, and so you could just bolt that sucker right up. It puts out about 3 amps, which isn't a ton, but it's not half bad. And you can buy little voltage regulators / rectifiers for dirt bikes for like $10 on Amazon all day long. I'm actually got one coming for this guy, and I'll drop that down into the link as well. And so that way you can run it through a rectifier, so then it goes from DC to AC. But I did watch one guy, he was running this wide open throttle, and it was putting out about 16.5, 17 volts, wide open throttle of AC current, which isn't super terrible, but you know, if you want to regulate it down to 12.5, 13 volts DC, then all you have to do is you can then plug that directly into a headlight, and while you're riding, the headlight's on, but as soon as the engine turns off, the headlight turns off. You don't need batteries, you don't need anything else. You can just run that switched power right up to the headlight. Now, personally myself, I recommend running a ground switch as opposed to a positive switch, but it's up to you how you want to run it. It's just power, headlight, switch, ground. You know, simple 2-wire, and now you can have a little headlight that's running while you're out there driving around. So, with that being said, the engine is fully prepped and ready to install. So, let's jam all this stuff back in here and make it look pretty. The next thing that we need to do, we need to make some mounting plates for this bad boy. This bolt pattern on this engine will not, it's too narrow width-wise. Lengthwise it's fine, but it's too narrow width-wise to line up with the 2 plates that are currently on the pug for the motor mount right now. So I'm going to be building a couple of plates that's just going to span. We're not getting too crazy with it because, like I said, we're going to be redoing all of this when we get the new transaxle in there. So we're just going to kind of throw something in there we mount the engine to and call it a day. So let's get started on that. So we got her laying on her back. She's on a piece of cardboard. Got to keep the paint nice. Got a piece of cardboard here. Just thin cardboard. You don't want to use thick cardboard. Ball peen hammer. This is actually my great-grandpa's ball peen hammer. It's a Vaughan. V-A-U-G-H-A-N. This thing's got to be over 100 years old. This was also his. It's a temper. True temper, number 1016. That's also my great-grandpa's hammer. You want to use a ball peen hammer, not a general duty sledge type hammer. So this style is called sledge. Doesn't necessarily mean it's big. It's just a sledge type hammer. This is the shape. Ball peen. I'm going to be using the little one. We don't need if you got a bigger one, that's fine. You can use one like this. But ball peen hammers have two purposes. Number one, they are used to peen. That's the name ball peen. They're used to peen over rivets, soft rivets. But also, they work great for what I'm about to show you. So we're going to get our piece lined up here. Now I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from probably here down to about here, and from here down to probably about here. I'm not going to be able to, this edge is kind of flat. I probably could cut it, but I'm not going to be able to get a Sharpie down there anyway. So as long as I have these two, and as you can see, there are some curvatures to them, so I know I'll be able to align those. So we're going to get our holes in, and then just right around the edges on this side right here. I can also cut that straight across with a pair of scissors to get our top. So, observe. Love taps. Love taps. Ah, completely missed it. See how we're easily able to line it right back up? This is where the hole's at, right here. Now I'm just going to show you real quick. Oh, look. Perfect. It left the cardboard in there. So you can see we have a perfect outline of the engine. We'll be able to pop this guy out. There we go. Now, get her nice and lined up. We'll come over and do the same on this side. Oil drain plug right there. Perfect. So as you can see, we weren't hammering on the thing. We're just nice and easy. Now, right here, I can cut straight across from here to here, and I can cut straight across from here to here. That'll give us an exact copy, as you can see, except for right here. That's the only little spot that it didn't really cut through. That's where the oil, look at that. Look how nice and clean and sharp that we got. We even got all the little angles. We got all the little divots. We got everything. But we need to keep working on it. We can actually use this, kind of push the cardboard back, and it helps line it right up. So back in the day, this is how your grandpa made head gaskets. They would take this and they would get a thin sheet of copper, and they would actually do this and hammer out a head gasket for their car. They'd also do this for carburetor gaskets or anything else. And that's why sometimes you see like smaller ball peen hammers like this, but you've seen even smaller ball peen hammers that you'd use for something like that. That was one of the main uses for them, other than peening over rivets. So let's trim this out real quick. Right there where the oil drain plug is at. Look at that. We have a perfect engine base gasket, if you will. You can see right here I kind of messed up and I was getting into here. It happens. But we're not actually using this for a gasket, so it's not super duper critical. But these holes will get us close enough when we go to mount this up and lock it in. So now the other thing is you got to remember, you cut it like this. So when you go to set it down, you have to set it down like that. That'll mirror the engine plate. So it'd been nice if they made this, a little bigger, a little wider. But it's actually an SAE bolt pattern and size for newer engines. Now, the engine that was on this pug back in the day, it was, pre-SAE, and it had a different size base plate. But that's okay. So let's get this mounted up in there. Let's get the pulley on. Let's get the belt adjusted. Let's get it lined up exactly where it's going to be sitting so we can trace it. We can throw this guy on there. We can trace out where our holes are going to be, drill them. Just bolt this sucker on. We're done with it. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. Hopefully this little bolt's not going to get in the way. If it is, I will take that bolt out and I will drill a new hole all the way clean through and move it over if I need to. But there's a good chance that it might work. I don't know. It's only one way to find out. Let's throw it up there. All right, so as you can see, I did go ahead and got a thermometer just so we could keep an eye on what the temperatures are. So right now it's 32 degrees American. It's 0 degrees for the rest of the world. It's a little bit chilly out here. It's not freezing cold, but it's pretty chilly. Right now, where I live, in the mornings it's been between 3 and 7 degrees American. And that's, let's say, negative 15. Science for the rest of you guys. Just thought you'd like to know that. All right, we're going to be using this. It's a nice heavy-duty 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood. I do have some OSB over there, but I think the plywood's going to be a little heavier duty. I did go ahead and measure out. I'm going to be making sure to use a trusty 48-inch drywall square to cut a piece of wood. It's perfectly fine. And let's get this cut out real quick. We're going to go 14 1/4. By 43 and 3/4. Wear safety glasses because nothing is more fun than getting a nice little piece of sawdust in one of your twin optical examiners. We're going to be using the Drill Master. Paid $15 for this thing, brand new back in the day. I paid more for the blade. Now you can see I got the blade completely buried. As far as it'll go. It's beneficial. Oh, sure isn't. Not that better. Cut. No, that side of the line won't cut on this guy. That side of the line. Perfect. Touch bit crooked, but we just make sure you put that side down, Okay, let's check this and see how she fits. Perfect. Nice and even right across the top. We got a little bit of a gap. That's just what I want. That way when we get the vinyl wrapped around there, you're not just wedging it in there tight. Perfect. Okay, so I think the best way to go about this is to get this guy upholstered. Get it bolted in, get it in its final location before we measure the bottom piece. So the way I'm going to attach this to this piece of metal, the way I'm going to do it is, let me show you. I went and got some of these guys right here. I don't know if you've ever seen these before, but apparently what I've been told, what you do is you drill a hole, you put that guy inside the hole, and then with the bolt, as you tighten it down, it sucks it in, and these little teeth on there, they grab onto the wood, and then you got a nut, and you don't have to have a wrench on the back side, and you can just bolt it and unbolt it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2, 4, 6. 3 across the top, 3 across the bottom. It's probably excessive for a seat, but I hate rattly things. So that's what we're going to do. No rattly things. And then we're going to go ahead and bolt it together. Now, like with everything, we're going to drill the holes in the sheet metal first, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball them. One there, one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. Then we'll put the piece of wood up here. Then we'll drill into the piece of wood. Now we know the bolt holes match up perfectly. Then I'll take the piece of wood out. We'll drill the holes a little bit bigger to fit these guys. And then we'll put these in. We'll get these installed onto this piece of wood. Then we can go ahead and install the foam, install the vinyl, get everything together. And then we can come through and just bolt it right on, and it ain't gonna go anywhere. Nice, permanent, solid seat fixture. So let's do that. Okay, so one of the things I do want to do with these bolts, I don't want them to be too close to the edges. You know, so I don't want to drill them right on the very corners. I want them to be on the inside a little bit. Let's give ourselves an inch or two, you know. Let's put them, you know, there, a couple inches off the side, a couple inches off the bottom, right? They don't need to be on the very outside edges. They can be a couple inches on the inside, and I think they're going to work out just fine. So let's, yep, right there looks good. So about the middle, sure. Got one on that side. Sure. Okay. Now let's press it up. Best you can. You know, closer enough. Sure, that's good. So check for holes and a piece of plywood. Perfect. Now we're going to be making these holes bigger so we can fit those little, I think they call them tree nuts, if I remember correctly. Perfect. We got our little tree nut. Look at that. Fits in there nicely. You could probably hammer on them to get them in, but I'm thinking we should use the bolts, suck them in. Might hammer on them just to get them to hold. All right. So these guys are 1/4 by 20. So I'm just going to stick one in. I got a 1/4 by 20 bolt. Get her kind of lined up. Stick the 1/4 by 20 bolt in. Let's get it threaded, get it started. There you go. She's installed. We're going to do that 5 more times, just in case you didn't know. All right, looky there. They're installed and they match. Are they equilaterally distanced apart? Nope, they sure aren't. Does it matter? Nope, not even a little bit. Okay, so now we are ready to install the foam and install the vinyl and then bolt it in there for it to never come out again. So let's do that. Okay. Perfect. Bill. Slides in. You just something. All right. Now, I do just want to reiterate for the 47th time, I have never upholstered anything before in my life. I ain't even joking, okay? So just keep that. Just file that, back there when you're watching me do this. Okay? So the vinyl I decided to go with, obviously it's white, but I did decide to go with the marine grade vinyl. Whatever that means. It's marine grade. So it should hold up a little better in the sun, I'm hoping. That's what that means. Maybe it's a little more waterproof. I'm hoping that's what that means. It probably means absolutely nothing. It probably just means you paid more for it. While I was working on this pug, I started to think about one of my favorite Bible verses, Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. A final word, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all strategies of the devil. For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places. Okay. sure as soon as that warms up, that little crease will kind of work its way out, and then the vinyl will be loose. Perfect. Let's go, let's bolt this in. Let's just, it is what it is at this point. All right. It fits. Almost like I planned it that way. Wow. That's cool. All right, well, I do need some more 1/4" bolts because I used them all on other things. Thought I had more. I very clearly do not have more. Okay. Carefully. Perfect. I'll put 2 more right in there tomorrow. Let's hop in this bad boy and just see how that feels. That's very stiff foam. I think maybe for a seat back it might be, I don't know, too much? No, no such thing. Ugh. No, that's nice. Once we get the seat in there, the seat is thick. You'll probably be sitting about like so. It's definitely a small cab. There's just no way around it, but you know. I think back in the 60s, people were a lot smaller. I do have to say though, that does feel pretty good. That does feel pretty good. I hope this vinyl's pretty tough, you know. You're out there working, logging trees and, you know, all the other things. Throwing the tools up on the bench seat. Man, that's some thick foam, but it's very squishy. It's very comfy. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to build the base is going to go from here up to here. So we'll just measure it from here because I want to be able to reach down, lift it up, have access to, you know, the shift linkage if you got to mess around with that or whatever. And that's kind of but there we go. We got the seat back done. All right, it is time to make the bottom seat. Now, when I was, I cut out this chunk to use as the bottom seat, and then I realized there's a huge bow in this piece of wood, so I'm going to turn this sideways, and I'm actually going to cut the piece of wood from right over here, and that should get rid of that bow. So let's do that. All right, perfect. Now we have a nice board here. It's nice and straight. There's not a lot of bow to it. Just a scotch, but not bad. I don't think that's going to really cause us any problems. Now, there are two bolts that are on the seat back, the little uprights, the little wings that come down. There's two bolts that hold that together. And so I'm going to need to drill out using a hole saw right where those two holes are at in order so this can lay flat. So basically we just need to make some cutouts for those bolts. When we put the foam and the seat cover on, you won't even see those. They'll just be kind of there, but you won't see them. So let's get that marked up. Let's get those drilled out. All right, perfect. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to drill 3 on either side because we're going to be putting hinges on this. It's going to be able to fold up and down the seat. We want the seat to be able to fold up and down, so that way you can get to the belt, shift linkage, things like that. Add oil, change oil, just general serviceability of the front transaxle there. So we're going to need the seat to be able to fold up. So in order to do that, we're going to have to put some hinges on this bad boy. So we have to drill the holes on this so we can put our little tree nuts in, and then we could attach the hinges to it. Once that's all squared away, then we're ready to cut the foam and staple all of the vinyl on and get this bad boy mounted. So let's go get the hinges prepped. All right, so the hinges that I decided to go with are kind of just your standard door type hinges. These ones are heavy duty. As you can see, they have no bolt holes or holes drilled in them. These ones are designed to be welded on. I went with these because they're heavy duty. They are stout. I couldn't find the thickness of the metal. By the time I found hinges that were this thick, that were already kind of the pre-drilled, they were either chrome plated, nickel plated, which would make it difficult to paint later on down the road, but also they were way larger. They were, huge. And I was like, well, I don't want massive hinges. I want to try to keep the hinges as small as possible, but I'd like to get something as heavy duty as possible. So that's why I went with these ones. Now these ones are peened over on both sides. You can't take them apart. You can't slide the little pin out. So we don't have to worry about, putting this on, the pin wiggling, free like on a door hinge, where you can just, hammer the pin up and take the door off the hinges. We're not going to have to worry about that with this particular style. And this one's designed to be welded on. So we're going to have to drill our own holes. One of the main failure points with hinges is when you're sitting on the seat and you are transferring weight through the hinge into your base material, your mounting material. That's when you're going to run into a lot of failures. What's basically happening is we're going to be using 1/4" bolts in order to secure this onto the fiberglass, and it's just going to be bolted to the fiberglass. Fiberglass is pretty thick, it's pretty strong, shouldn't have any issues with that if all that it's going to be doing is supporting the weight of the seat while you're holding it up. When it's in the down position, 100% of the weight of the seat and as well as the driver needs to be sitting on the seat and directly into the fiberglass through the seat. If this is cocked up just ever so slightly, then you're going to be transferring all of that weight into your bolts that you have running through the hinge into your material. And doing that, you're basically just put 3 little 1/4" knives directly into the fiberglass, and they're going to just vibration and saw their way through the fiberglass, and now you have elongated holes. It's going to eventually find its place where it's happy in its equilateral position where there's no weight on it anymore. So you got to make sure there's no weight on the hinge when you mount it to start, so that way you're not sawing holes through. So one of the ways that we're going to do that, the other thing is we're going to be using these guys right here. They're screws, 1/4" by 20 screws, but they have this nice tapered seat. So I'll be able to drill into this, make the holes, and then I'll countersink the holes so that these will sit perfectly flush, because I need the base of this to sit perfectly flat flush up against the fiberglass. If I just use regular bolts and there are bolt heads sticking out, then those bolt heads are going to vibrate and grind their way into the fiberglass, making 3 new bolt head holes into the fiberglass, which is then going to start putting strain on these, and the whole thing is just going to weeble wobble its way down until everything's nice and flat and smooth, and now you've made a bunch of holes and grinding and uncomfortable, and it's bad. So in order to avoid that, we're going to drill these. I'm going to countersink them. I'll then get our piece of plywood, and we'll transfer the holes for this directly to the piece of plywood. We'll drill it out. We'll put our little Christmas tree, our little pine nuts, tree nuts into the wood. And once we got both of those ready, then we can go ahead and build the seat. Once we have the seat built and have these attached to the seat permanently, I'm going to set the seat in there. I'm going to also drill these 3 holes out too right now at the same time. But then we can set this in there, and then I can transfer the holes into the fiberglass. We'll drill the holes into the fiberglass and then put the bolts in. So that way everything gets assembled in its totally relaxed state. We don't want to pre-drill any holes on anything. We want to drill all of the holes into this, then transfer these holes into our other material. So let's get started with that. Looky there. Beautiful. Okay, let's go drop this bad dude in the pug. Let's just see what she looks like. I think those hinges are going to work perfectly. Look at that. Look at that seat. Stand back and take a look at it. It's really thick. That is one really thick seat. It almost looks goofy, but you know what? I don't care if it looks goofy. Is it going to be comfy? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't even feel the plywood. Man, that is a comfy seat right there. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be just fine. Yep. 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 That's nice. That's really comfy. Man, this is awesome. This is awesome. All right. Let's get these holes drilled out here real quick. Now, see how we have the seat in here? I don't have any holes drilled in the fiberglass yet. So these hinges could be anywhere. Now that we have the seat firmly installed, now we can drill our 3 holes. And now we know when the seat's in a closed position, there's not going to be any tension on the actual fiberglass or on the hinges themselves. And that's what we want. Perfect. Oh, I like that. Nice. Perfect. Perfect. Let's do these guys over here. All right, so here it is. We got the seat bolted down. It's looking really good. And check this out. Boom. We can tilt the seat up. We can get in here if we need to adjust anything. We can grease our steering linkages down here. We can mess with the belt if we need to. Shift linkages. We can get all that adjusted. And then the seat folds right back down nicely. And we can hop in this bad boy. Look at that. That shifter's definitely not made for the passenger. You're gonna have that right in your leg. But check this out. Is that not freaking awesome? Now I am really glad I went with the 4-inch thick foam. Sitting on this, I'm not collapsed all the way into the foam. Also the 3-inch in the back, I can't feel the back. You got to remember, this is the suspension of the Pug. That's all she's got. So I'm really happy I went with the 4-inch foam. And I just picked this stuff up at Hobby Lobby. This was just Hobby Lobby foam. You know, you saw the packages that was coming in. Nothing fancy to it. You know, and yeah, could I have gone and glued all the things together? Yeah, probably. But does it need it? I don't think so. All right, I think that's going to do it for this week. We didn't get as much done as I really wanted to. I had a really, really long week at work. I'm actually filming this right now on Sunday afternoon, and I got to go edit this and get this uploaded as soon as possible. It happens. But we got the seats done, and that's actually a really big part of it. This really starts to make the Pug look like it's finished. It's got a nice vibe to it. So now all we really got to do is we just got to bolt the engine in, which the plates are made, everything's ready. We just got to set it up there, bolt it in. I got the last couple pieces for the intake. So we can get the intake assembled, we can get the air cleaner put on. We got the last couple pieces for the exhaust, so we can go ahead and get the exhaust made, bolted on, hooked up. Next week, I want to see this thing drive. We got to put some oil in the transaxle. We got to put some oil in the rear axle. We got to fill that with oil, fill it with gas, and take her out for a ride. That's the goal. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out. And if you're this far into the video, I appreciate it. I really, really do appreciate it a lot. And if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and hit a like. Just throw me a like. It really helps me out a lot. And if you enjoy what you've seen so far, think about subscribing. You can go ahead and subscribe by clicking on this button right here in the middle. Or if you want to watch last week's video, over here on this side. If you want to see the rest of the series, The Pug, over here on this side. Thanks, and have yourselves a wonderful day.